The member for Euroa.
On the inquiry into fuel prices in regional Victoria, which was undertaken by the Economic Education, Jobs and Skills Committee and tabled in this place in February this year. The aspect of the report that I particularly want to note today is the evidence that that committee heard with respect to a lack of available public transport in rural and regional areas. In particular, the rural city of Wangaratta gave evidence to the inquiry and said that the only option for more than 65% of its employed residents was to drive to work. And of course, a consequence of that is that high fuel prices have an enormous impact on country residents. But most particularly, it also means that when there is a lack of public transport, people have very little option. And I believe that improving public transport really is key to reducing that strain on country families. Unfortunately, what we've seen in recent years is that performance of V-Line on the Albury and the Seymour lines has both deteriorated substantially. So the most recent figures for the Albury line shows that punctuality has decreased from 91.1% in November 2014, when we were last in government, to 81.3% in June this year. Punctuality in the last 12 months has averaged 73.1%, and the number of services that have been cancelled in the last 2 years alone has been 381 on the Albury line. That quite simply is not good enough, and I'm deeply concerned that the Andrews government continues to reject the need for new passenger trains on both the Albury and the Shepparton lines, which of course also benefit people commuting south of Seymour. On the Seymour line, punctuality has decreased from 91.7% in November 2014 to 88.3% in June 2018, and the average services cancelled over the 12 months in 2014 were 90.5. There is now an average of 85.7% of services that actually run in the last 12 months. So again, the performance on the Seymour line has deteriorated substantially over the last 3.5 years that Labor has been in government. I obviously have given a commitment to continue to tell the stories of travellers from my part of the world who are using that deteriorating service. Pat Page is a 74-year-old who lives in Euroa. And she describes, like many people in our region, describes the service that we have as being third world. She recently had a hemorrhage in her eye and she was able to get a last-minute appointment with a doctor in Melbourne. But on Thursday, the 19th of July, she arrived at the Euroa station and caught the 8:24 train to Melbourne. At 8:55, the train still hadn't arrived, a very common story. She called my office and we contacted V-Line, who were able to confirm that the train was cancelled and replaced with a bus, but they could give no information about where the bus was and what time it was expected to arrive. Passengers were left without any updates and with no information. The bus eventually arrived at 9:30, an hour and 6 minutes after the train was originally due to leave. Pat has said, "From year to year, we stagger from one disappointment to the next. It's disheartening to be treated that way." And she was an hour late to her appointment and only able to squeeze in thanks to the understanding of her doctor. Patrick and Maureen Richards from Benalla had a horrifying experience on the 18th of July when they were travelling back from Melbourne on the 6:02 service. The train broke down between Kilmore East and Donnybrook, where passengers were forced to wait for 2 hours for a replacement engine to make its way to them. They were then pushed all the way back to Melbourne at Southern Cross, where they had to board buses in order to get home, and they didn't make it home until nearly 1 a.m. and no compensation was offered to them. And after that instance, I had a flood of people coming through my door with grave concerns about that, including Tom Crocker from Benalla, who was on the same train. And Tom said it's in instances like this that stop customers from using public transport to get to and from Melbourne.